How you doing? Hello everybody and welcome back to the Educated Call Snap channel. Today we're going to be talking about the December Datamine. So every time a patch is released, usually they put more information in there for the future so that they don't have to like do it day of and whatnot. So we do have some information about December, so we're going to be talking about the cards added and some of the cool changes as well as a bundle adjustment that they did. So let's begin. So the first thing I want to talk about even before we discuss the December cards is I recently made the bundle analysis, right? And in that bundle, I had Peach You're So Cool as one of the best money bundles to get for November, right? It was 100% essentially value. If you bought it, you're getting the variant for free. Well, it looks like Second Dinner decided to change this bundle in particular. Not many under bundles, and my fears are realized, right? Conquest tickets are being added to some bundles. I don't personally understand why, and I don't personally like it. But anyways, like that's what they decided to do. They've seen some value there. We're going to be looking at this updated one, right? So essentially, you gain 1,000 more collector's tokens, but you're losing tons of credits and you're losing tons of gold, right? So I wonder if I have the old list. I do have it, right? So the old one was 5,000 collector's tokens, 3,500 credits, and 2,000 gold. So you're losing 3,000 credits, 1,500 gold, and you're gaining 1,000 tokens. You're getting a conquest ticket. This ends up being around 78% value compared to the 100% we add. So you're losing 22% value to get a conquest ticket. Doesn't make sense. I really don't understand the reason to do this except to like make money spenders less happy. Honestly, I don't get it. So I just wanted to let you guys know this has changed. I'll probably adjust the bundle video I made, but yeah, not a good bundle anymore in my opinion. I wouldn't recommend it, which is a little bit sad because you know it's a bundle that a lot of people wanted, right? They like the variant, but now they're like not gonna give us much. I don't get it. Anyways, let's move on to the actual meat of it. I just wanted to mention that. So here we do have the December Datamine, the December changes. We've got some new cards to talk about, and we have some adjustments from the cards in the previous seasons that we would also want to talk about. So, new December season pass. We have Sebastian Shaw. That's going to be the season pass card. Cool looking card. We have Professor X and White Knight and White Queen. Professor X played a lot. White Queen not as much, but you know some people like the variants, right? Female variants, people love it. That kind of thing. So. Let's look at the actual change cards. We can start off with Sebastian himself, and then we'll go with the other ones. So he's a 3/3. When this card permanently gains power, gain +2 more power wherever this is. So wherever this is kind of signifies that you can buff in your hand, you can buff in your deck. So Nakia, Okoye, those kind of cards would take advantage of this with the ability. Also, there are some locations, right, that buff in your hand. Wakanda's Embassy, I believe, does that. So that's another cool location. You're not going to get those locations a lot, but it's a 3-drop. So you always think about Surfer. Does Surfer work with this? Surfer works with this absolutely very well. And this could very much be a new staple for Surfer decks. Surfer decks are eating good already. Werewolf by Night as well, coming out very soon. Also buff Surfer decks. So there's a lot of good Surfer synergy. Sebastian Shaw, if you get like 2+ buffs, it's a 3/7. Right, plus the buffs you're getting, right? So things like Nova Killmonger will do it. Things like Surfer itself does it easily. You can Nakia it. There's decent ways to make it good, and it's not necessarily this is like your win condition or anything like that. This is just a card you can put in a Surfer deck that grows big by itself, right? Even without much synergy at all. So that's the real meat of it. It's not like this is your win condition. This is just a good card in the Surfer deck that you can build around, and you can also just make other things, make other decks that build around this very easily. So this isn't a card that necessarily you'll be seeing as a staple, but this is a card that fits in a very good niche and fits very well. So I think this is a card that's going to see play. Looks pretty good, makes sense. Definitely a card to look out for if you like that type of art type buffing things. Elsa also, right? a lot of good buff targets to take advantage of this. So I think this is going to be a good card that's worth a season pass, and we'll talk about it more as it gets closer. Now let's go by order. So we have Havok. First one. This one was the first one that looks a little bit weird to me. So it's a 2/1. After each turn, you lose 1 max energy, and this gains +3 power. So theoretically, if I'm reading it right, let's say you play this on 2. Next turn, you're also going to have 2 mana. Turn 4, you're going to have 2 mana. Turn 5, you're going to have 2 mana. So that makes it really hard to play, honestly. If that's the case, there's another argument where you could say, oh, it's just like 1 max mana energy permanently, and it doesn't like stack, like where you play on 2, next turn you'll have 2 mana, and then 3, 4, 5, right? Like that would make it like quite good, honestly, right? Like if you're building in that archetype where you don't care about the extra mana, then you're getting like a 2/13, a 2/10, like without too much of a hassle. That's a pretty good power to pay off. So if that's the case where it's only that 1 max energy and it doesn't stack, then it's a lot more usable. If it's the other case where you play it on 2 and you have 2 mana for the rest of the game, that's really hard to justify unless you're giving it to your opponent, right? So that's one of the caveats that looks playable here, where if you go Havok and Viper on the same turn, and you can give this to your opponent, now your opponent has something really annoying that they can't get rid of, right? You can't really remove this. It's not ongoing or something, so you can't enchanters or anything like that. So you just have this annoying card that your opponent can easily remove at the end of the game, right? With a Shang-Chi, with Shadow King. So that could be a noticeable place where you play it in some type of junk deck where you're giving them another option to give an annoying card to your opponent. But if it is the case where you're just stuck on wherever you play, right? You could maybe, another synergy is maybe combo it with Storm. So you play Storm on 3, you play Havok in a 2-drop on 4, and that should be good enough to contest anything that your opponent wants to do, right? Dr. Doom won't do anything. So you can definitely guarantee that lane, and then maybe you can set up like a Professor X to win another, or an Ally to win another lane. So there's definitely some uses about it. It's not a dead card. It's the one that looks initially the weirdest to me. So there's definitely some strategies with this card to talk about, but it is a card that might struggle unless there's like really good synergies or you have like a game plan in your mind. So this is just a card that I'm not too sure about, like in terms of meta viability, but there are some ideas floating around my head that I could see this doing decent work with. Now we have Selene. A lot of people seem to like this card in terms of like the artistic. I don't know anything about the lore, so I don't know if she's like a cool hero or anything like that. But she, in terms of playability, right, she affects the lowest power card in each player's hand with -3 power. This is actually a pretty good ability because you get to control when you do it, and that gives you a lot of control. You also get to build your deck with this in mind. That gives you a lot of control. So if you're targeting something like a hood, right, where now it's a -6, well, you can give that to your opponent. That's not bad. You could also hit a goblin. You can give that to your opponent. That's not bad. And it's a 1-drop, right? So that's very easy to replay if you want to bounce it, right? This could be a very interesting bounce target. And this could just be a nice like junk tool as well, right? If you're giving your opponent -6 goblins or like green goblins, that's pretty annoying for a 1-drop to be able to do. -6 is a lot, as well as just being something you can play around. And just if you hit an annoying card from them, like if you hit their, like what's a good 2-drop that has low base power, right? Like that's pretty important, right? Like you hit it, like you hit your Deadpool, right? It's dead. You hit like their Viper, that's pretty important. You hit like their, like what's a 2/2 Daredevil, right? Like a card they want to play. Even if you hit like their Mobius, right? Now they're playing a 2-mana 0, right? Like there's a lot of annoyance with this, and it just fits into your style. You're usually going to be playing a junk heavy deck with this type of card, and it just like fits in perfectly. So I definitely think this is a card that can see play. Seems good in the decks that make sense. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is like a meta part of a card that's in the meta deck. So yeah, seems solid. Firestar probably for me is the most hyped. Oh, let me move my camera actually. Is the one I think like probably to me seems the most broken personally. As every card you play last turn gains this card power. So you're playing you want to be flooding on 5 and then you Firestar on 6, right? Like that's the idea here. A nice thing about this is that you can play in any lane and it does a lot of damage as long as you're synergizing. The card that jumps out to me right now is just Mysterio, right? Mysterio plus this. And I think a lot of people will want to make this their whole game plan. And I'd say that's the wrong approach with a card like this. What's really good about this card is it does a lot without needing that much, right? So if you play Mysterio and something else on 5, right? So Mysterio's 2 and you play a 3-drop, right? So you played 4 cards, right? Then you play this. You have no synergies whatsoever, right? You're playing this, bam. So that means you're plus 12ing on your other cards, plus Firestar is 3 power. So you're plus 15. So it's a 6-15. You've done no extra effort. It's a 6-15. That's really good. That's not bad at all. A 6-15 in your game. Like, what card is that? Magneto's not that. Hulk isn't that a lot of the time, right? Like, that's a lot of power with no synergies, right? You haven't buffed this card at all. And if you give any inch of synergy on this card gets stupid, right? And that's where you have really good cards, where the baseline is very strong, but with synergy becomes oppressive. And I would say like that's where Firestar is for me. I'm not sure this card will last. Honestly, it just looks OP to me. I don't know how you can let this go through personally. So this is a card I just think like, oh wow, there's a lot of synergies. There are some other things you can do. Negative seems powerful. The issue with negative right now is like Mobius has killed all negative decks right now, and unless Mobius gets toned down, it's going to be hard to really justify having these matchups where, oh, they played Mobius, I have no chance, right? So that's where I would be struggling to put negative in the meta right now. But it is something that, hey, it's a 3-6, like you know, you're insta win, but then negative is insta win in a lot of cases. But this is even more so. So there are some scenarios here where you can just do a lot, and I just think like there is so much going for this card that I think a little too good personally. So yeah, definitely the card I'm most excited for, but I wouldn't be shocked or surprised to see it get adjusted or changed in some way, right? As we've seen, some cards are getting adjusted from last time we saw. I think Firestar is something that is in that conversation, for me at least. Next up, we have Blob. So Blob's a funny looking card in multiple ways. It's ongoing. I feel like doesn't do anything, can't be moved. Like, sure, I feel like they're just tacking it on because the card itself doesn't make sense from a thematic standpoint. I don't know anything about the card, but I assume it's not a card that, I mean, maybe it's a card that absorbs, or a hero that absorbs everything. I don't know. But its ability is on reveal, merge your deck into this, right? So that's potentially crazy, right? In terms of like, you play this on 6 and you have some big cards. I assume you're going to be playing Infinite in your deck or something. And you say you didn't draw Infinite, so but you're going to merge it. This thing's a 23 minimum, right? Like it's going to be way larger than that. So this can definitely win you a lane, right? And if you have some synergy, some way to win another lane, this could be your, hey, I'm winning. I'm winning my Blob lane. This can't be moved. Like, there's not a lot of cards that do that. Like Spider-Man does it, and Arrow does it, right? But other than like no one really cares. And I assume if they have priority, it doesn't even matter. If it's unrevealed, it doesn't even matter. So like the ongoing is a little bit like not doing anything in my opinion. But the ability to merge your deck into this could be pretty cool. The one caveat is like, how do you build around this, right? Like this is a card that's hard to build around unless you're playing like Hela, unless you're playing like some Quicksilver domino or something, so that you have no early game in your deck or anything. But like it's hard. It seems hard to build around this, consistently, but what do I know, right? It's a fun looking card that could make some crazy things. If you could get Living Tribunal out before this with like Living Tribunal, Iron Man, Blob, like that's fun. But then again, like, isn't that win more if you already have Living Tribunal, Iron Man? Like, you just play Onslaught, right? It's the same thing. So that's where my caveats are. Like, how do you really fully utilize this in an elegant way? Not too sure, but it is an interesting card that has some fun potential for sure. I just don't know about the viability of the card in essence. Like, that's where I'm not too sure about, but it seems cool. And then we have two changes from the last time we talked about the November cards. So Martyr is getting nerfed, and well, is Martyr getting nerfed? I don't know. Martyr's getting adjusted. That nerf is not fair. Gladiator is getting nerfed. Martyr is getting adjusted. So Martyr is now a 1/4 at the end of the game. Move to a location that loses you the game. So it's not the power. The ability has not changed. The difference is a tower. It's now a 1/4. It used to be a 2/6. Now, is this better or worse? I'm actually not sure. Personally, I do like that you can now play it like last turn and it's like viable. So you can play a 5-drop and a Martyr. And this card does want you to fill the lanes, right? So making it cheaper does mean that it's a lot easier to fill the lanes. The only question is like, where is, like, how much synergy can you do with this? Like, what are you gonna do to really make it feel really, really strong? I don't necessarily know. It's not jumping out to me. I'm not a big Martyr fan. I don't want to have a card that can just lose me the game. I also don't fill locations too hard, but I do think in flooding decks, right, like Firestormer could be a very nice combo if you go like Mysterio into Martyr into a 2-drop, right, into Firestorm. Like, that could definitely be a good way of doing that. So there's definitely some playability. There's not a lot of 1/4s in the game without like a huge downside, right? The best one is Titania, but that has a hard. It's hard to play early. This one seems a lot easier to play early and then synergize from there. So I definitely think it has some approaches, and we'll have to see what decks get created with it. But it's interesting change. Don't hate it. Don't love it. I'm fairly indifferent. And then we have Gladiator. So Gladiator is a card I was thinking was too good anyways, and it's losing a power, so it's getting a little bit worse. My issue was like at 3/8, like it kills everything. In essence, like the chance you get a card that survives was super low. Now as a 3/7, I think you have more options to have cards that survive, and that could really cause problems, right? So same ability, it adds a card from your opponent's deck to their side. If it has less power, destroy it. I still think it's going to be playable. Still think you can definitely put it in Silver Surfer decks, whatever, etc., and still do pretty well. I just think 3/8 was like really crazy strong and kills a lot, and you can put in so many decks. So I think it's a little bit fairer now. Still good. I still think it's good. It's just like maybe a little bit more balanced, right? 3/8 was like so crazy. So I think I'm fine with the Gladiator change. Martyr change, I'm indifferent. Blob is interesting. Sebastian I think is super solid. Firestar I think is pretty broken. So that's the one I think is pretty broken. Selene seems very solid in junk decks, especially with Annihilus and stuff coming out. Seems very solid. And then Havok, depending on like how it works, I will have different opinions. If it's like it permanently cuts you to like 2 mana if you play this on turn 2, then like I'm not doing that, right? But if that is the case, then you Viper this. Now, if it's the case where it's like you have 2 mana the turn after, but then you have 3, 4, 5, 6, or 3, 4, 5, then you can do some stuff. Then it's not as crippling, right? Like you wouldn't, then Viper isn't as necessary, things like that, where you can just maybe put it on in storm lanes, things like that, and it's not like too bad. But if it is like you're permanently stuck at where you played, then it's a lot harder for me to justify it. So definitely some interesting cards, I would say. In this one, right, I could see I recently released my Spotlight tier list for this month, and I was saying you could skip them. This one, I think there's gonna be some you can keep, especially if Firestar stays the same. This card is so crazy to me. I don't see how you don't add it to your collection. But yeah, and then overall we do have some new changes and stuff like that, new locations. We have the spotlights as well. So those are going to be things we'll talk about more. I don't want this video to be too long. And we have the bundles as well, right? So in the next bundle guide, we'll get through it, and then we have the variants. So definitely some interesting stuff in the patches here. They always have tons of variants, so you can go forever and ever. And then they have tons of titles as well. Like Jesus, that's a lot of titles. So yeah, they're really working on that kind of thing. But yeah. And then we have the balance updates that we recently had. So overall, that's my thoughts on the new December cards. So we have the cards for the whole year, which is cool. So definitely like to have more information than less. Some of the changes like the ticket bundle stuff, not happy about, but that's their decision, right? So overall, that's all we have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Educated calling snap. Once you watch him, you won't go back. He'll teach you to marvel snap. Your skills will be